Joining me now for more on the White House's plan or lack thereof, Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois. For the people of Illinois, what do you tell them about what the federal government that you are part of and what the White House, the administration, and Congress, what the federal government's plan is for the people that you represent in the state of Illinois to make sure that there's a safe way for them to start to come out of lockdown?
Well, Chris, what I tell them is don't trust the Trump administration. Listen to Governor Pritzker and his plan for the state. Listen to the Illinois Department of Public Health and the plan that the governor has put forward. He's put forward a very methodical plan, 5-step plan. But what you need to know is like the first 4th step of that plan is social distancing and wearing masks. And all throughout that plan is more testing. We have to have more testing, and then we need to do contact tracing. But don't trust what the Trump administration says to you because they don't have your best interest at heart.
One thing that worries me about the sort of return to work reopening conversation, and again, I say this as someone who very much, like a lot of people, wants to restore some normalcy, like does not think it's either feasible or advisable to keep people locked down for, I don't know, more months more. But this idea of it being the kind of liability and risk being pushed onto workers. So you have unemployed workers who are now being told if you don't go back to work, well, then you're quitting. You're not being laid off. You can't get unemployment benefits. Bosses telling people not to wear masks in their workplace. Iowa tells workers to return to their jobs or lose your unemployment benefits. Do you think we're looking out for workers enough in the conceptualization of how this is all going to happen?
Well, Democrats are trying very hard to look out for workers, and we've been pushing very hard. I myself have introduced legislation to provide OSHA protections for all of the frontline workers. And I don't mean just the heroic doctors and nurses and people in our healthcare system, but also the heroic grocery store cashiers and the janitors and everybody else. I also helped co-introduce legislation to provide hazard pay. You know, I used to get hazard pay in the Army for flying a helicopter. Well, I think that, if you're out there cleaning the hospital as a janitor, you should get hazard pay as well. But are the Republicans looking out for these folks? No. Let me go back to that, to what they said about the meatpacking plant. Those people are not normal people. Those people don't have an option. They either have to go to work or they lose their unemployment insurance. And if they're afraid for their lives, they don't have a choice. And that is fundamentally un-American that we would do that to one another. And also, by the way, many of the people who work in those meatpacking plants are either from the Black or the brown communities in this country. So there's a lot of Latinx folks who work in many of these factories in these meatpacking plants, and they have some of the highest rates of positive testing for COVID-19, as well as African Americans are suffering at far higher percentages than the rest of the population as a whole.
Final question for you. A piece of news today that I think got a little buried, understandably, but is pretty striking. I think the president's new press secretary at one point referred to him as the healthcare president. We have a global pandemic. We have more than 70,000 Americans dead. We have, north of 1 million cases. Today was the last day that the Department of Justice, the President Trump administration's Department of Justice, could have changed its position on a lawsuit to destroy, rip up, reduce to rubble all 2,200 pages of the Affordable Care Act, the entire edifice of current healthcare regulation and provisioning in the United States of America, and they did not. The president right now wants to urge the Supreme Court to destroy the entirety of the ACA, is in court right now essentially to do it. What do you think about that?
Well, unfortunately, I think it's consistent. He's been right there, and all the Republicans have been right there to try to rip away health insurance from all millions of hardworking Americans. They want to take away the protections for pre-existing conditions. They want to put you back in the bad old days where over 50% of all bankruptcies in this country were from medical bills. They want to take health care away from Americans. And in fact, instead of ripping up the ACA, they should actually be opening up the exchanges on an emergency basis so more people can actually sign up right now. Illinois has requested the exchange be opened up so we can have people register so that they can get health insurance coverage. That's common sense in a pandemic, but they won't allow us to do that. And now they're trying to just rip up the entire system so that we're all going to be at the mercy of insurance companies. And I would rather not let that happen.
Senator Tammy Duckworth, who you see there, is back in our nation's capital. The Senate has convened this week. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time with us tonight.
Thanks for having me on.